All right, welcome back, everyone, to The Roman Show. And all the way from London, we have author Kwame Alexander. His new book, Becoming Muhammad Ali, is available now. It's a great book, inspiring, at a perfect time, too, with the current circumstances that the world is facing. But it's for children and even for adults. You might get an inspiration, of course, about the great legendary boxer, Mr. Muhammad Ali. Kwame, thanks so much for joining us here on the program. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So Kwame, tell me about this book. You've written, of course, many others, but what was the inspiration behind this one? Were you a big Muhammad Ali fan? Did you box? What was the whole motivation behind the book?
Yeah, I was a huge Muhammad Ali fan as a kid, and I was also a pretty avid reader. And probably around middle school, my father started giving me these books to read that I wasn't interested in. Many of them were historical text and even some of his PhD dissertations. So around age 11, I just wasn't interested in books. And I happened to be in my garage one day, and I discovered a book called The Greatest, the Autobiography of Muhammad Ali. And I couldn't put it down. I read it. It was 400 pages, and it was just unputdownable. And I loved it. And it really sort of reinvigorated me and got me excited about reading again, to delve into the story of this cocky, beautiful, rhythmic, athletic, smart, funny man who became the heavyweight champion of the world and ultimately, eventually, an activist and a great human being. So that was really my major introduction to Ali. It was through his autobiography.
But you never boxed or any sort of a combat sport?
No, I never boxed. The only sport, my dad played basketball, and I tried to play, but I wasn't that great. So my sport became tennis. Okay. The closest I've ever come to boxing was in a gym and doing exercise and kickboxing and that kind of thing. But no, okay. I'm just a fan, man. Kwame is a fan.
So how long have you been working on this book? Because it just seems it almost seems like it was a perfect fit when the book was released because of the current tensions that the world is living in today. But how long was the process to put this book together?
Yeah, unfortunately, the tensions are not so current in the sense that we've been dealing with these kind of social injustices as Black people in America, since we were kidnapped and brought here. So, but in terms of when we started working on this book, James Patterson called me in December of 2018 and said, Kwame, we should do this book together. And so we started on it in earnest in the spring of 2019. Wow. And, again, Muhammad Ali was a big proponent of social justice and freedom for Black people, but for oppressed peoples around the world. And it just so happened that the book came out at a time where the boiling point of racism, reached a critical high in this country. And I think that, young people in particular can learn a lot about perseverance and resilience and standing up for what matters through this book, because that's what Ali, as a kid, had to face. Yeah,
no doubt about that. He definitely did. And, it's funny you say about the poetry and the work that Muhammad Ali, with his words. I think I read somewhere that they called him the first rapper. You know what I mean? Because of the stuff that he wrote and the way that he put it out there. And if you go back, rap or hip hop for that matter, there was a message for African Americans back then to motivate themselves. And Muhammad Ali was at the forefront of that, of course. Now, tell me about working with Mr. Patterson. You said he called you. What was the relationship between you and him and putting this book together?
Yeah, we had met a couple times at a book festival in Palm Beach, and then we hadn't talked in about a year, and he called me out the blue and said that the Muhammad Ali estate, Muhammad Ali's widow, Lonnie Ali, they had contacted him about doing a book on Ali about Muhammad Ali's childhood, and he wanted to do it, and he wanted to do it with me. He knew about my relationship with Muhammad Ali's Autobiography and how it had changed my reading life, and he wanted us to work on the project together. So we did, and it was a really incredible experience in the sense that he's a master storyteller. Like, he knows how to plot a novel, and I think the outline that he wrote for this novel was about 30 pages, and once he did the outline, it was sort of like a round robin, a tag team. Mm-hmm. I would write, and then I'd send what I wrote to him. He would write, send it back to me, and we just went back and forth like that. And I want to say it took us about 8 months or so to really get the story, complete. But before we started writing, there was a great deal of research that was involved. We both read a lot about Ali. We read a lot about Cassius Clay, which was Muhammad Ali's name as a child before he changed it in his 20s. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time in Louisville at the house where he was born, where he was raised on Grand Avenue. I interviewed some people that he knew. I got to listen to oral history tapes of his best friends growing up. So there's a lot of research that was involved.
Wow, so you actually had to go, and of course, it's always good to get that vision of where Ali trained and his whereabouts growing up. So did you manage to visit, it no longer exists here, but the Fifth Street Gym? Of course, the original one does not exist, but it moved. It moved. But did you able to get to see some of his training grounds where he trained as well, and speak to maybe a trainer that trained him back then that's still around?
Yeah, I did, man. I went to the Columbia Street gym where he first discovered or encountered boxing, where he first began training as a 12-year-old, which is on the campus of Spalding University in downtown Louisville. So I went to that building and kind of walked around just to kind of get a feel for it. I went to Chickasaw Park, which was the park in the black neighborhood that he lived in the West End of Louisville, where he used to run around the park, train, and wear garbage bags, to sort of like, to help his endurance and to sweat off his body fat. Mm-hmm. So I ran the park. I wanted to get a feel for that. I got a chance to talk to one of his managers. I spent some time with him, with Bernie Human in Las Vegas, Bernie Human was like a 15-year-old kid who met Ali when he was training in Miami. Mm-hmm. So I got to meet Bernie and talk to him. So yeah, I got to really immerse myself in his life to really help figure out what his voice was going to be, and to really help tell this story.
Oh, that is really cool. So as a parent myself, I look forward to reading some of these passages to my children as a form of motivation and history, But what do you think in general the public will obtain from this book?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you can be super confident, almost arrogant, and still be kind and humble and gentle and compassionate. And that's what he was. That you don't necessarily have to make the best grades in school, and sometimes you don't for whatever reason, but that doesn't mean you're not smart. I think one of the things we try to do with this book is to show that Muhammad Ali, at one point, before he became one of the greatest human beings to ever walk this planet, an icon, an activist, champion, he was an ordinary kid who didn't do that great in school, who got jilted by girls, he had a crush, who had friends, who played in the streets with his buddies, who just was a regular kid. And we wanted to show young people that you can be ordinary and regular and still strive to be extraordinary.
Now, of course, Muhammad Ali has many, many stories. Will there be a follow-up?
I don't know if there will be a follow-up to this book, but there are some other people I'd like to write about their childhoods. I think it'd be interesting for us to really be able to know about some of these famous people in our history. What were their lives like as kids? I think that makes them more accessible for us. It makes it more real. It makes it more attainable for us. So I think there'll be some other stories, perhaps.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. And again, Kwame Ali, Muhammad Ali is available right now for your purchase. Of course, you're part of the Miami Book Fair, which is well-renowned. How has that been working? Because this year, of course, with coronavirus, it's no longer in person, which is not the greatest thing. It has to be virtual from now on. But how has that virtual experience been, speaking about the book and taking some questions from the public virtually?
On the one hand, you don't get to see your friends at the Miami Book Fair. I don't get to see Lisette and Mitch and Edwidge and all my peeps down there. And I love coming to the Miami Book Fair. But on the other hand, when you're online, when you're virtual, you get to reach more people.
Right.
You get to reach a lot more people. So maybe there's a silver lining here. And I just try to, I don't have to travel as much. I can walk my kid to school and still do 2 or 3 events a day. Whereas in the past, I had to travel. I had to tour. So I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm enjoying this virtual touring. And I'm certainly going to enjoy the Miami Book Festival online.
Well, hopefully next year, hopefully we're at a different point next time around, or the year after. And are you working on other projects that you can let us give us a sneak peek?
I'm working on a TV series based on my novel, The Crossover. I'm working on a movie based on my novel, Solo. I got some other books in the works. I'm always busy.
Well, good for you, Kwame. Appreciate that and your work. And again, thanks so much for your time. And Becoming Muhammad Ali is available right now. And pick it up online or at your local bookstore. Help out those folks, of course, that they're also in need as well. Thank you so much for your time, Kwame. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Roman.